I expect all of the NFT tech bros to make apologies just like Kiyoshiro did. Or they will be pierced by 108 arrows of light. Welcome to Podages, a monthly carol of holly jolly jubilance that spread peace on earth and goodwill to your podcast feed, your sprightly companion through Digimon Ghost Game!
Okay.
Well, this week we're discussing Episode 5, Divine Anger, Episode 6, The Curse Song, Episode 7, Birds, and Episode 8, Nightly Procession of Monsters. I'm Jeff, my pronouns are he, him, and I think I just witnessed the most horrifying spectacle that I've seen all year, because Toya did not give us any warning that was coming.
I'm Aster, my pronouns are she, her, and I already find it kind of scary how quickly we're switching to Christmas decorations.
And I'm Toya, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm the ghost of time loops past.
Okay. The spoiler policy, like always, we'll be talking about everything in Ghost Game episodes 5 through 8, and including the preview episode 9, which is probably not a spoiler if you're listening at this point because we're recording it on the day episode 9 comes out. So you've probably already seen episode 9. You're probably ahead of us. You probably have clairvoyance that we don't have at this point. But also, if we talk about any late stage reveals in other Digimon seasons, we'll give you fair warning.
Oh, I cannot wait to talk about episode 9.
Well, before we get into Ghost Game, what's making us happy in the world of Digimon this month?
Following up from our last episode, Digimon Survive got ESRB rated, and in particular, I was kind of interested in what was in that rating description, or more specifically, what was not in that description, because everybody's been kind of talking about people die in this game and all that. They really only have one dead body and some swearing to really make a statement about, because if anything had been worse than that, they would have mentioned it. And even Cyber Sleuth had mentions of mild sexualization and stuff like that, and here, there's just none of that. For me, that's a good thing because I know a lot of people really want there to be blood and gore or something, but I don't actually really care for that. And I also don't like the idea of being what I call needlessly edgy for no good reason. So I'm kind of glad if it can get what if it wants to do done without going a little too extreme.
Yeah, so Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory had language as well. Is that right?
They had language, so yeah, for all everybody was memeing on this. Actually, yes, Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory did have mild swearing.
Yes, it had all of the language. It also had very inappropriately used language, specifically language that should not be used by native English speakers in that way.
Okay.
I don't think ESRB is gonna flag that one, but
The ESRB should put a warning if the translation is awkward.
I'm just realizing when we were talking about this last month, and we were talking about how to be rated in other countries and stuff, they need to know the contents of it, and I joked at the time oh haha, they probably have to show off the poop throwing scenes, and I'm looking at the description for Hacker's Memory, and it literally is an attack called Poop Toss allows characters to throw a pink poo coil at enemies.
Yeah.
And one large figure resembles a yellow poo coil. That's actually in the rating.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh.
That's the one for Hacker's Memory?
Yeah, that's for Hacker's Memory.
Because on the Digimon Survive rating description, they say out of a variety of attack moves, Digimon can perform a poop toss, which is depicted as a cartoony poo coil thrown at opponents, and is accompanied by squishy sound effects. Oh dear. Well, squishy sound effects. I'm going to be scarred.
I like how that's right next to using curse words. That's on the same level. I don't get it.
Yeah, Digimon Survive does not have a mild language rating. It has a mild blood rating, but it just says language on the rating here. And then in the description, apparently we're allowed to say shit, bitch, and piss in Digimon now.
Well, it seems like we have one bloody body in one cutscene.
Just one.
Just one.
Which feels like false advertising with the whole, if only one person gets to die, come on.
Well, no. Only one person gets to die with blood on the corpse. There's a difference.
I'm curious, does Danganronpa evade the blood stuff because they use pink blood?
No, they have. This was a kind of a myth perpetuated by one of the early fan translators. Or I'm not gonna say myth because I think he genuinely believed it when he said this. But that was like a rumor. But I have actually been to one of the panels at Anime Expo where like Kodaka was actually there, and he said it was specifically just for atmosphere, like to like make it not come off as like oh so brutal in your face and to feel a little more like pop as they put it. Like it was just purely for like aesthetic. It wasn't for like ratings dodging.
Interesting. Well, I guess this is another sign that Digimon Survive exists. Toya, what's making you happy in the world of Digimon this month?
Well, Aster just grabbed mine. However, I was just thinking recently, so over in Vanguard, we got some bad news recently that put Digimon kind of in perspective for me. That Vanguard's general producer, Mori Keita, is leaving. He's retiring from Bushiroad after like less than a year, and this is the fastest turnover we've ever had on a general producer. The others, like I think, lasted 4 or 5 each, because Vanguard's been around for a decade and there were only 2 before him.
Is this someone that came alongside the Overdress relaunch?
Yes,
stuff?
he was responsible for Overdress and the overall direction of the franchise, like not just the card game, but the whole thing. Like I'm sure Bandai has a general Digimon producer on staff whose name escapes me right now, but that kind of position where you're coordinating all of the different elements. And Mori was like, he's really brought Vanguard into the best era it's ever been. So we're not going to get answers on why he's gone for 3 more days at their big strategy conference, but it just reminded me of like the dire straits that Digimon was in just like 6-7 years ago, back when I was running the Tamer Union blog, and I was reflecting each year on like how alive the brand was, which was not very. Like we would get a video game every 1.5 to 2 years, maybe, which we weren't guaranteed would be localized. And then, well, we had Digimon Adventure Try at the time, but like that was not a TV series, right? Not like what we wanted. And so with what's going on in Vanguard right now, people are actually comparing it to the metric for success in the TCG world right now is the Digimon card game. Like it has had one of the biggest launches and sustained growth periods of any TCG in like recent memory. And Vanguard people are talking about, come on, we need to catch up to Digimon. We need to be on that level. And that's a huge twist. Like that was not conceivable to me back in like 2014.
And that was when like Hyper Coliseum, or like whatever you want to call like the original Digimon card game, was like, that was considered just like that thing that the only reason anybody remembers it the West is Tamers.
Right. It has a different legacy in Japan, but yeah, that's definitely how we thought about it in the West. So I guess I'm glad for where Digimon is right now, you know? I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Well, speaking
heavy.
of worrying about Digimon, so I think I'm reassured by what you're describing about the health of the Digimon card game on the Japanese side. But this is a good transition point to my, well, okay, so I do have one thing that I'm happy about in the world of Digimon this month is that the local card game shop, or my closest local card game shop that is like a short walk away and not like an hour plus public transit ride, has started doing Digimon events, and that's exciting. And I'm going to one like right after this recording. So hopefully there's, well, I'm worried no one's going to show up, but then that would mean I get an invitation to nationals for just showing up. So that I might like that too. Anyway, so basically for this tournament I'm going to later today, it's the first tournament that I've seen in the English, in the North American local card game shops around me that is BT6 legal.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who aren't following the Digimon card game, BT6 is the first that has had a staggered release outside of Japan because of the international shipping nightmare. Maybe it's not so much international, mostly affecting North America, mostly affecting America or US at this point.
The shipping to the port that is outside my house.
Yes, which I also happened to be at last week and saw the line of cargo ships, just the container ships just lining up outside the port waiting to get in. But yeah, so BT6 came out I should look up these dates, came out outside of North America like a month and a half ago, and came out finally in North America like 2 weeks ago. And the thing that I pre-ordered like 5 months ago finally arrived yesterday. And it's like, oh my God. And alongside that, in Japan, BT6 was accompanied by a pair of 2 starter decks. And okay, that I'm totally accustomed to the Japanese meta not matching the English meta. I think that's actually cool that there's like variances and differences, and there's like promo cards that come out at different times, and it changes things up. What I find really frustrating is that the starter decks for some regions came out at exactly the same time as the booster boxes, and
Right.
in North America the starter decks still aren't out. So it's like, not only is there a difference between the English meta and the Japanese meta, that's cool, but there's a difference between like the Oceania meta, the European meta, the North American meta, and it's like,
Right.
it's so hard to find like advice about decks and their performance and stuff, because it's like, so many decks, you know, require cards from the starter decks that aren't out yet, or from EX1, which is another set that is going to be staggered in this weird way, where I think they're claiming now it's going to come out in I think January for North America, but that's probably going to be the end of January. Meanwhile, it's going to be out in other territories like in a couple weeks, and it's like, everything is just such a mess. And I especially don't envy content creators who are trying to make content for this with a splintered fan base, where like,
Yeah.
it just like, you like, all the videos and stuff I found are basically assuming that eventually we'll get everything that Japan did around that time, but then it's like, that's only going to exist for like a weird window before the next thing comes out. And it's I like, so it's weird, like, do you make content for the regions that have the stuff on time, or do you make content for the regions that are getting them delayed?
Right.
Like, I wish. And the thing is, like, it's affected my own interest in the game, because it's like, well, I haven't gone to events in the past couple weeks. It's like, well, I mean, I don't have the cards yet. They haven't arrived yet. Like, all the content creators online are already starting to move on. Like, I've already started doing stuff for the next set, and I'm like, okay, we can't even play that. Like, and I don't know. It just seems like I'm seeing, and also I'm seeing the content creators slow down on their videos and stuff, and it's like, it really feels like the more sets this happens to, and the more months this is in the game's in this weird state, I think it could be an existential threat to the English version of the game.
Right.
Jeff, I hear what you're saying. I feel for you, but I am also playing the tiniest fiddle right now as I stare at TCG Player and see $900 War Greymons. Like, okay, I'll tell you right now, Digimon card game is in no danger. And I'll give you some perspective. Back in my day, when we had to walk uphill both ways through the snow to play Cardfight Vanguard at the one store that wasn't trying to force Call of Cthulhu on us, we got the first 3 sets of Japanese Vanguard localized here, like more than a year after the fact. I think we were 2 years behind Japan at that point, even with our releases happening twice as fast. And then they gave us boosters 6, 7, and 8, and then went back to 4 and 5. There was immense hype to like play the Shadow Paladin clan, which would have been introduced in set 4. And actually we got the extra boosters out of order too. So we got Shadow Paladin cards before you could build a full Shadow Paladin deck. This would be like introducing a new color in Digimon, but only releasing like their year 2 boss card like in English first, and then releasing the color it belongs to a year later.
At least that's like a weird divergence between English and Japanese. Like, I feel like this kind of like splintering of the English market is what like could easily result in like, okay, we're gonna scale back and just focus on the Japanese side. That's what I'm scared of.
I don't think so. Digimon is in a very good place globally right now. Like Vanguard, I'm legit worried about what its future is going to be if they're going to end up pulling out of North America, because they have a great position in Europe right now and a solid position in Japan, although the Japanese fan base is still like, as soon as Mori's retirement was announced, they started panicking. But like, we're down to 16 shops, maybe fewer, that are actually hosting events in all of California, which used to have 50 stores hosting tournaments. That Digimon has over 100 stores just in this state. So I'm not worried about that. I think that those little release things, they'll iron themselves out over time. Like Digimon, we're so close to synchronization between the Japanese and English game. In Vanguard, we have promos that have never been released. Like I remember Witch of Attraction Adora was actually a very vital promo for the Witch subclan of Shadow Paladin. It's still played, or well, now witches are kind of a joke now in premium format, but back when Vanguard in the classic era, that was like a really important card for that subclan. If you were like a specialist that wanted to play that deck, I still managed to make day 2 of Grand Fest in this was before they announced the rotation, so I guess that would have been 2016 or 17. But like, we've had tons of stuff like that just never came out in English. And even years later, people are like, seething isn't the word, they're pining for it. I don't see that problem in Digimon. I think that everything is going to be released sooner or later. The supply problems, that's an issue. We don't have that in Vanguard, or at least we have some shipping delays, but they're like announced in advance on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they just like kept the entire English market in sync. Like, I understand for the first, like the stuff that basically they probably didn't find out was being delayed until it was actually like not arriving, and like arrived elsewhere in other countries and not in North America, and then it's like, okay, you can't like pay to keep them in warehouses across internationally.
Yeah.
But like past that first wave, like I feel like they should have just bit the bullet then and made everything as delayed as North America. Which I mean, yeah, it sucks to like hold everyone back because of one country's I don't know, not being able to fit through. Actually, I mean, no, the problems of the Long Beach port apparently aren't. It's more like it's not really a problem of mismanagement or anything. But yeah, I think it. I think that like the longer that they're out of sync, the more pain everyone's going to be suffering. So like I feel like they could have bit the bullet once and then just kept all of the English territories delayed. But oh well. I mean, I hope it survives. I hope with this new set coming on English, there is some more reinvigorated energy in the English player base. But we'll see.
Just wait till you get your first set rotation.
They can never make Omegamon. They can't make Omegamon. They can't delete Omegamon from the game. So.
They'll rotate all the cards except the Omegamons.
True. All right, well, that's enough card games. Let's get into ghost games. I didn't mean for that to be a kind of a parallel. But anyway, let's start with Ghost Game Episode 5, Divine Anger. In this one, Jellyman. Oh god, that sounds horrifying. But no, Jellymon debuts and pranks Kiyoshiro into becoming a chosen child. Majiramon and some Zodiac-inspired armor Digimon start attacking because Jellymon hacked the digital financial system, and Kiyoshiro undoes his digital charms and unleashes his secret power to save the day.
His secret power of apologizing.
Did he apologize?
He did apologize. After he took care of the immediate problem, he got on his like hands and knees and apologized.
Yeah, this I think this batch we're talking about this week or this month is weird because I think it's, well, I guess I'll go ahead and reveal my full hand of cards here. I think 2 of these episodes might be my favorite Digimon episodes of all Digimon series.
It's funny because we kind of predicted it was going to be like this last episode when we asked like, what do you think will happen? Like, how much plot territory do you think we're going to cover by like the next time we're recording again? And we basically all said like it's probably going to be like this. So it ended up like this, but it was very entertaining.
Yeah, like I think the fact that basically it wasn't just us. It was like every discussion I saw about Kiyoshiro, like everyone basically came to the conclusion that Jellymon's probably haunting him. And despite that, this episode was still so entertaining and surprising. Like the fact that they made it surprising while everyone knew exactly what was coming.
It's like they do really do a good job with that on how to put like tone regulation. Like, especially because the premise of the series is supposed to be about horror, right? So you really think it could kind of go over the edge into like genuinely unpleasant or just like a little like overdoing it. But then, it's like, oh, there's writing on the wall, but it's ketchup and Gamon's eating it now. And then, oh no, there's snakes. And then Gamon's playing with the snakes. I'm really sad that his snake friends have to go away.
PSA, do not let the babies play with the snakes.
I appreciate Gamon on like a totally different level now that I spent Thanksgiving holiday around my 3-year-old nephew, because I'm like, oh right, that's what Gamon is. He is basically a toddler, and the way that innocent baby is able to like deflate the horror in funny ways is great. It's so good.
Yeah. Gamon is just like such an important cornerstone of the show, like even beyond just being the protagonist. Just like the way he's written is like so on point.
Yeah. Toya, what was your reaction to this episode?
I expect all of the NFT tech bros to make apologies just like Kiyoshiro did. Or they will be pierced by 108 arrows of light.
So I just want to make clear, like a lot of people were like wondering if they were legitimately talking about like crypto, but the thing is digital money is like used as shorthand for things like PayPal. Right. So it's just like general like electronic transactions and stuff that,
Digidollars.
I don't actually that kind of thing. I mean, I also know some people were saying like this is like the closest thing to an Atmon premise because it was about like IoT stuff.
Internet of Things.
Goodness, if something happened to our banking system, bad things would happen to all of us. So.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how it's like, it is like you're saying, it's very similar to a thing that could be an Atmon premise, but it's like, it's like instead of it being that's the natural flow of things and an app comes in and messes it up, it's like Kiyoshiro is the one who messed things up, and like, like it's not the natural flow of things for this to be.
Jellymon messed it up.
Well, okay. I mean, Kiyoshiro set up the things that Jellymon then exploited,
right?
But like, I think Jellymon on her own couldn't have done that, and so
I want to to know what's the process of digitizing blessings. Like that's.
You'll have to ask Shin Megami Tensei about that.
I
Yeah.
love the contrast between like Kiyoshiro's like extreme intelligence, like being able to hack everyone across the city, and his like sheer absurdity that he thinks a digital talisman will do anything. And it obviously does nothing.
It's, high intelligence, low wisdom, as I call it.
Yeah.
I will say that, like, so with this batch of episodes, none of them became my favorite. I actually started to feel the ghost premise wearing a bit in the middle, like during episode 6 and, well, not 7, because Astra and I watched that together. We group watched that, and it's more fun to watch this show with other people, you know.
That's everything, by the way. Yeah, it's always more fun to like have group watches.
But I think I was like, man, I miss Frontier by the end of episode 8.
Okay.
That's so specific, man.
I don't like Jellymon.
You don't like Jellymon? Oh wow.
No. I don't think that she has really earned her place with the cast much. She's mostly just caused problems on purpose.
Do you want to go duke it out in the parking lot? Let's fight. Let's go, bro.
I don't know what to say because I like characters who cause problems on purpose. So I just sort of like, yeah, well, you know, it sounds like both of you are right, so I don't know what to say here.
Yeah, I find her like Agent of Chaos personality fun.
Especially because, like, we do have like some fairly well-behaved kids this round, which I think is just like kind of a trend about like modern Digimon series in general, that like everybody's getting like a lot more well-behaved. But then you have like this one who's just like causing problems on purpose. And I do think they are portraying her as a little more detached from human morality than the others.
Mm-hmm.
So it is coming from somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, the angle of Jellymon that I don't love, the darling angle. That part
I was honestly like really scared it was going to become another Leomon and Jury situation.
Oh,
And
I've seen enough Dojin mangas to know where this is going.
I was very relieved when, like, after episode 5, it seems like the relationship between them did not. If anything, it actually improved because she wasn't like physically like manhandling him anymore. But it was just like the name thing, which like I mean, just like, okay, if you leave it there, I can get behind this.
Yeah.
Because it could have been that much worse, and that's what I was really worried about.
I think the degree to which she does that is it's gonna vary based on the episode directors and individual writers in the future.
Probably. But I've been kind of like watching those two to see like how that dynamic is played out. And I do think it's interesting that like you have this like with Kiyoshiro, especially you have like this one of like he wants to be there but he doesn't want to be there, but at the same time he kind of does want to be there. It's not like they're completely dragging him in there against his will.
You know what character I realized he reminds me of exactly, and maybe this isn't a reference people get since it's not anime, but Arnold from the Magic School Bus.
Oh.
Like he doesn't want to be dragged along on the field trip, but he likes being on the field trip.
We're gonna have to make a soundbite out of that one. Kiyoshiro.
It's just like he doesn't want to be there, but at the same time, like if you say the right things, he kind of does want to be there.
No, I knew I should have stayed home today.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, hearing Darling initially like first like set off lots of red flags in my mind because I associate it with Darling and the Franxx.
Oh.
And how 02 calls the main character Darling. I mean, it's also in the title. And that is that's a show that has a whole ton of baggage. A show that I appreciate the sheer absurdity of the sexual energy and like taking the like metaphorical angles of partnerships in mecha series to the absolute absurd extreme. But then it also gets into like
other things,
kind of like anti-gay propaganda, and like that's gross and disgusting on a whole different level. But anyway, so there's a lot of baggage hearing the term darling in Japanese for me, but I appreciate how they didn't. The other big parallel a lot of people have been drawing is Nagatoro, which people aren't aware is a recent series about basically a nerdy boy main character who meets this girl in his class who enjoys teasing him, and she's fairly popular and he's not popular, and she basically like takes an interest in teasing him and basically emotionally abusing him in a way that like starts off feeling very, very uncomfortable, like basically bullying that he is not on board for. It does not feel mutual or consensual at all. And she's clearly doing it because she has a crush on him. And I've heard that eventually the series gets into a more sweet mutual kind of thing, and like they becomes less of a like abusive bullying situation and more of a wholesome rom-com kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes it not quite feel like that for me, this Jellymon Kiyoshiro situation, is that I appreciate that Jellymon is not being secretive about her quote unquote
Right.
crush or whatever. Like now, like after episode 5, she says darling publicly. It isn't like secret. Like part of the Nagatoro is that she's like abusing him, but then like secretly has a crush on him and doesn't want to admit it.
And like Jellymon let up on him even. Like in the first episode, like she was just like physically tossing him around, like legitimately like physically grabbing him and like forcing him to like she was basically just like, it was coercion basically, like almost like threatening him with his life almost. And then like after that episode, she just basically just dialed it down to just like teasing him and pushing his buttons a little bit, which also is like, even then it's also like him, it's also increasingly clear that he also wants to be involved in this too. It's not just like they're like completely dragging him in against his will. So it evened out a little bit.
Yeah, and this feels bad to say, but part of what I think makes it more appealing than the Nagatoro situation is that Kiyoshiro kind of deserves it a little bit. Like he kind of he's acting so over the top in reaction to any kind of thing that it's kind of like it's fun for the viewer to watch him being teased, whereas in Nagatoro it's, I don't know, at least initially, very not fun to watch this like random kid.
Kyosho's the one who keeps like locking down on like responsibility, so they just remind him that he has responsibility and he like just falls for it.
Well, if you roleplay as Joe Senpai long enough, you might become Joe Senpai.
The other thing I thought was interesting about this episode is how like Majiramon's duty supposedly is to properly ensure the flow of money, and that made me really wonder. I was curious if either of you know more about the like mythology behind that, because like, I mean, in this situation it was kind of clear, like, okay, there's a natural flow of money that Jellymon disrupted, but like I feel like I'm like, is this ultimately like a pro-capitalist message that like Majiramon appears to like ensure capitalism is all good? Like, but then I was like, I bet people like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg, whatever, would be more like the kind of target that Majiramon should be.
Well, I think the fact that they were also invoking spiritual powers in that was like also part of the problem. Like if it's like humans screwing each other up, that's one thing. But if you are invoking the spirits to do things that humans should not be treading into territory of, like you are going to be punished for that. That was kind of my impression. Generally speaking, there are a lot of things that frown heavily upon like humans invoking powers that they are not supposed to.
And the thing about Majiramon is that he's based on one of the 12 heavenly warriors of Buddhist mythology, which predates the whole capitalist idea. And I mean, that's probably a big blanket statement to throw out now that I think about it. Predates the idea of capitalism.
As we know it.
Predates modern capitalism, modern hyper-capitalism.
But capitalism as like an economic system had predecessors. Like feudalism, money flows differently under feudalism. In some cases, money doesn't exist under feudalism, which that's probably the like most general high school level example I can think of that is taught in classrooms, right? That like in a feudal society, you have specific classes and occupations that are hereditary and appointed and organized by a higher authority. And it's basically not possible to accumulate capital or profit in this system unless you belong to the merchant class, which is like the inherent destabilizing factor that ends up upending feudalism historically and creating it kind of sets the stage for capitalism to appear. And then even older than that, you have other economic systems like slave society or primitive communism. But Buddhism goes back a very long time. I don't remember the specific dates for the invention of Buddhism. The flow of wealth thing, though, that is something that gets mythologized in different forms. It's funny because I probably should think of Majira for this because I have a background in Asian art history, but I don't. Instead, I think of Onamazu, the catfish. I think it's a catfish god or a deified figure that, like, in a lot of Japanese Edo period art and some later more recent, more modern-ish art, you would see like because the catfish is said to cause earthquakes mythologically, and earthquakes represent a huge exchange of wealth, that it like destroys buildings and creates construction jobs and financing positions. And so you would sometimes see like Edo period artworks of people kind of shaking down a catfish trying to get it to cause an earthquake. So it's not really the protection of capitalism that they're talking about with Majiramon, but like this more general transfer of wealth between people and the procession of an economic system in a society. Like people have to eat, right? And in order to eat, there has to be an exchange of wealth between them. or they starve.
Well, I think I want to see Majiramon strike down Toei for not being supportive of their workers that want to unionize.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, he should. I'm pretty sure he's pro-union.
Sure. Sure.
Also, speaking of the 108 arrows, I mean, this is kind of a sore subject to bring up, but I feel like we're starting to see through the cracks now of the animation in a way that I haven't found super notable. But I've heard people like on Sakuga Twitter, people who are like, especially like used to for Adventure, like pour over the animation details, and now are kind of like, oh, it's getting sloppy, and it's clearly not. It's not the kind of series that Toei is pouring lots of animation, like the top animation budget into and stuff. But overall, I'm okay with that. Like, I feel like what we've gotten instead, which is like decent character writing, lots of people talking, interactions.
All I'm going to say is have you seen the original Digimon Adventures animation quality?
It's painful.
That's all I'm going to say. Like,
it was animated on a budget for a pizza. Maybe not even a pizza box.
Yeah.
I don't think they had a lot of faith in the IP back then. So like they were like, of course it was like low priority on the animation like role. It wasn't until 02 until the budget got a little bigger, and then like Tamers and Frontier even more so. But it's like
Frontier feels HD if you marathon all the series in like sequence.
Like we are kind of back where we were with Adventure, which is that like we have to kind of prove something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The original Adventure, I mean. And like if you have seen the original Adventure, you will see like there will be a shot where Biyomon will have 2 beaks and it's not an in-between shot. It is like still on the screen for like a whole 5-6 seconds, and I can even like show you a screenshot from the Blu-rays of this that it made it all the way to the Blu-rays. Like, you want to talk about Adventures animation quality, like not only from like an off-model perspective, but also just like from a motion perspective. It's like, you know, we're talking about the anime that basically like kickstarted almost everything we know about Digimon anime now. But the animation quality on that is something.
But yeah, in this episode, the only like, I don't think this was like sloppy animation, but I did find it particularly weird how so like the 108 arrows are raining down on Kiyoshiro, and then he does his attack, or I mean he declares his attack, unleashes his secret power, and Jellymon does the like BB, what's it called, BB Thunder, BB shot, something like that. But then the arrows, like they were like imminently like about to pierce them, and they just disappear, and it's like okay. I mean, I guess. So, like, that's the kind of detail that I'm kind of disappointed by. It's like, feels like attacks just disappear mid-attack. But I mean, the episode itself was still one of my favorite Digimon episodes. So, you know, I can't complain too much.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about this episode is that there's a slight myth that I've seen going around that I just want to quickly dispel. And that's what the concept of chuuniful is.
Oh, okay.
I think it's not the most. I think for people who watch enough anime, it's clear, and people who don't watch enough anime, it's like, what is going on with this bandage thing? But chuuniful, basically, the name comes from, it literally means like second year syndrome.
Second year middle school syndrome.
Specifically second year middle school, which is, I don't know if this is. I don't think this is a real phenomenon that happens to real kids, but it's definitely a thing that a lot of characters anime do, where in second year of middle school, they have a particular kind of like a mix of arrogance, but also delusion, that like pretending to have grand powers that clearly don't. But it's like, yeah, it's bizarre. And it's basically, if you don't understand the trope, it's Kiyoshiro. It's someone who, well, aside from the whole being a master student, but like basically pretending to have powers, doing things like covering their eye because like, oh, this is a cursed eye that if I reveal my eye, it'll show my secret powers, and that kind of thing.
That's a real thing.
I think it's it is a real thing. I think it's an exaggerated version of the real thing, because when I was a kid, I liked to imagine that all my jewelry in the house had magical powers, like all the TV shows. So like you're still at that age where you still want to have a little fantasy in your life, I guess. I don't know if it's arrogance per se, as much as like you just want to believe that your life is a little more fantasy, and that like, especially if you really like TV shows and anime and stuff, like, you know, you want your life to be a little more interesting than it is already.
It's not even Japan specific. I mean, it's a global phenomena. It's the reason that middle schooler is used as a pejorative by a lot of high schoolers. Yeah,
like the reason why it's called second year middle school syndrome is like, it's because like it's in that stage of your life, you know.
Yeah, I remember when I was in middle school and like walking to school, and I would pretend that I was Sakura roller skating on the way to school, and it's like, what was I thinking? Like, what?
I'm learning so much about you through
skates.
this podcast.
But we learned that he was like he came back because he wanted to live the anime life. So
right.
that's just basically an extension of that.
Right, like But the kind of myth that I've seen is that they're making a direct reference to like a particular show with this, and
No.
it's just a
It's a
trope.
trope.
It's across lots of shows. I think the show that I first saw the trope in was oh god, what's it called? It was a Trigger show. I think it's called like When Supernatural Battles Become Commonplace.
Right.
But I don't think that definitely wasn't the first. The one that gets a lot of attribution is a show called Love, Chunibyo, and Other Delusions, because that
Right.
has Chunibyo in the title. But I don't think that was the first either.
The word chunibyo actually showed up in Cyber
Yeah.
Sleuth.
Oh,
There's a point where like Nokia like starts like mocking, like I think it was one of the cases with Ryota in it, but like Nokia starts like mocking, and I think like they translated it, and so that's why like you didn't see it in its pure form. Like I remember like one person was even saying like why is Cyber Sleuth trying so hard to be anime? I'm like, no, that's a general trope now. And it's I even like in my friend circle, like anytime there's an edgelord character, I will jokingly call them a chuuni. And I think there's been like at least video games that will translate it as like edgelord or tryhard.
I know that my first encounter with it was with Danganronpa 2, that there's a character who I think his whole talent is being a chunibyo. Or no, his talent is officially animal tamer, but he is a chunibyo.
Yeah.
He has
total
a
chunibyo.
bunch of
Gundam Tanaka.
Yes. With his hamsters that were like the four heavenly kings in Japanese, and I don't remember what the English localization called them. But also in Cardfight Vanguard, we had the same thing with Nakagami Eru in Cardfight Vanguard Link Joker, which aired around 2013, 2014, and he actually had the whole bandaged hand and bandaged eye as well, that like supposedly would unleash cursed powers. And he got told off in the series for acting like that by a character who literally had acquired cursed powers in the second season, and his hand had started to rot away as a result.
Like the other funny part with Kiyoshiro is that he is literally a second-year middle schooler. So you could kind of like forgive him for that if it weren't for the fact that he's supposed to have graduated grad school.
Yeah. It's so absurd how it's not just college, it's grad school.
But he came back for anime.
At least he doesn't have a PhD. Like, I guess that would be too far.
No, he had the realistic experience of like, okay, you go to grad school, your eyes are bright and full of wonder, and then you burn out and you drop out and you return to your own country and just pretend that never happened.
And indulge in anime.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why do grad school when you can live the anime life? If I had that option. I frequently have dreams where I wake up and it's like, oh, I have one more semester of college left, and it's like,
I had one of those not too long ago.
Very exciting. So like, yeah, if I could go back to middle school in Japan, sure. But yeah, I guess moving on to episode 6, the curse song. Moving on from at least my personal perspective, one of the best episodes of Digimon ever, to the first that made me actually worried about this season a little bit.
I mean, I understand that they probably picked the first reboot ending song because of rights issues, because they don't have a lot of options. Knowing what I do about music labels and how horrifically draconian they can be, I legitimately doubt they had a lot of options to pick from, other than, wanting to be cute. But they didn't have to play it so many times.
Seriously,
like you were gonna get so sick of that song by the end. I feel so bad for like everybody who worked on that song.
Yeah, it's I, on a meta level, I appreciate the idea that it's that particular song that's cursed. Like, it's not like any song in the karaoke building. It's like, if you play that particular song, it's like, we get it. Adventure 2020 is cursed. Okay, sure.
That's the takeover we're getting from it. Yeah, okay, yes.
They could have picked a song we were already sick of, though.
I'm trying to think of a Digimon song that we're sick of.
The Evolution themes from 2020.
Well, the thing is, I don't. I mean, the problem is that if you try to use a shonen battle song, that part about like you have to sing with your heart is not going to work. Yeah. It has to have some kind of like ballad-esque quality to it.
Yeah. So I think this episode was like, it was very formulaic. I've heard the term filler has been thrown around a lot, and I think that's fair to some degree.
I was really wondering with this episode, like, what is its greater purpose in terms of the whole progression of the series?
Well, at the time it aired, it was valuable in that it was the first time we got to see the entire group bouncing off each other and coordinating, but I think the next episode pulled that off better.
Yeah, like in this episode, they kind of like accidentally come together. Like, Jellymon brought Kiyoshiro to the same building that Hiro and Rulu happened to be at. So it felt kind of like random. And I appreciate it better in episode 7 where they're actually coordinating together and stuff and meeting and discussing and stuff.
Like, you got traces of like what their individual skills are and what each one brings to the team in 6, but like 7 was where they really just like brought it front and center. So yeah.
Yeah, I much preferred 7 to this.
7 was basically just like most of what we learned in 6, but reinforced much better. I mean, I'm not saying I don't think like more is a bad thing, but just like if I have to compare the two, then yeah, I'll take 7.
Unless they like bring Sirenmon back and have some continuity to this episode later, which I suspect they will. I mean, as we know of the series right now, you could probably skip this episode and suffer nothing.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like plot mechanics, like I guess it is important because it introduced Ruli's vital bracelet, introducing a different type of digital field.
Yeah.
But like those are the kind of things that like it's not like that episode was founded on that principle. It was like it just kind of happened in it and could have happened in any episode.
You do have Mizuki Nana as Sirenmon, which is incredible meta casting joke right there.
Yeah, that's, gosh, telling her to sing badly.
Mizuki Nana of all people, really.
Windows 7 herself.
What was she was she like a mascot for Windows 7?
She's literally like one of the most famous voice actress singers in like the entire industry.
Yeah, she did, she was Fate Testarossa in Nanoha and Hoshina Utao in Shugokera.
Isn't she Hyuga Hinata?
Yeah, I think so. She's also, as I said, Windows 7. She voiced the mascot for the Microsoft Japan commercials.
Like, if you see her Wikipedia page and, like, how huge it is, like, she's, like, if you talk about, like, voice actress, singer, she's, like, on the top of, like, people you know about that. So everybody's like, how did you get that, like, for a bit role?
My high school iPod was basically nothing but her. I think one of the songs she did was used by the Japanese Self-Defense Force to promote their air capabilities.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, her debut role in anime was Flint the Time Detective?
And the name of the character is Yamato Sora? Oh boy.
This is some kind of curse. Also in Shaman King.
Yes.
Oh, right. She was Rue in Princess Tutu.
She was a lot of things. We're going to be here all day if we list her, like, major roles.
Her whole cinematography.
The Wikipedia list is way too long. Well, yeah. I mean, this episode, yeah, I feel like it was fine. I mean, I think the only thing that's actually like disappointing about it is how abruptly it ends and how like it feels like the reasoning for it ending not comes out of nowhere, but like isn't sufficiently explained.
It's very fast.
Yeah.
Like the pacing wise, it just like whams at you and you have like 30 seconds.
I got to the end of this and I was like, yeah, that sure was an episode.
But I think that probably contributed to about 10 more seconds of cute Gammon singing at the end.
Yeah, so I guess that means it was worth it, I guess.
Yeah, there's our MVP for episode 6.
Gammon singing at the end, absolutely.
Yeah, but speaking of, like, yeah, it's like you were describing the good parts of episode 6 were done better in episode 7. I feel similarly about the bad parts of episode 6 because it ending abruptly for no reason is also what happens in episode 7, titled Birds.
I was wondering if we were going to get a 2-parter with that one.
Because it didn't feel like it was actually resolved at all.
The villains are still at large.
Yeah, but they got hit by one attack, so they're cool. Also, I guess okay, so we're fully moving on to episode 7, Birds, and I don't know. I guess also we really wanted a Savers style like accompanying human partner,
where the human has gone completely is actually genuinely the perpetrator, basically.
Right. And that's what this episode kind of delivered, but not in the way that I found fulfilling at all. Like
Bird Jesus.
Well, I feel like this depiction of this bird worshipping character, it just feels like he's unwell, and in a way that is not fun to watch him. It just seems sad. I'm like, he needs help, and no one's giving him help.
Oh, yeah. There were a couple questions about this, but why the Fibonacci sequence?
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the whole, how everybody memes out putting the golden ratio spiral on, literally everything?
Yeah.
There's a whole meme out of putting that. So it's possible, that's what they're saying, bringing it back to nature. So it's the natural Fibonacci spiral is found on, everything if you extrapolate hard enough.
Yeah, I got that was the point they were going for, but I still thought it was silly and contrived, because also the places where that guy and Yadagamon are hitting whatever, they have to have a concentration of birds. So I'm like, how is it that there happen to be a concentration of birds at these places in the man-made world? That doesn't, I mean, in the city, doesn't necessarily
I guess the
Yeah.
implication is that if you are a hardcore enough bird fanatic, you could probably figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, I guess.
That's why there's a hardcore bird fanatic involved in here and not just a bird.
It also just felt like the fact that also the center of the spiral happens to be what seems to be a big, was it a zoo or like a bird observatory?
It's a conservatory.
Conservatory, okay. So like the fact that like, I mean, you could have just guessed that they would go to the biggest bird place, like, I don't know.
They were at the bird library.
Yeah. And well, this is one of the weird things is that the TV guide listing named the character named in Daigo, and the show itself didn't ever name drop that. So
I was pointing this out when I first heard about that, but like, if I had a nickel for every time there was a character named Daigo that they didn't actually mention it in the series, but we had to figure this out through external information, I would only have 2 nickels, but it's kind of funny how it's happened twice. The other is back in Crosswords, Kiraha's dad is apparently named Daigo, but the only reason we know this is because of the Japanese closed captions.
Wow, I forgot Kiriha had a father.
You're the one who's the Crosswords fan!
I know, but it's we've talked about this before, right? Kiriha, his backstory comes very belated in the series.
Yes. It does.
I don't even remember it existing.
His father was Bagramon the whole time.
Well, what do we think about the debut of Genmon's second evolution? How do we pronounce that? Cows? Cows?
Cows.
Cows.
I thought it was interesting. That was actually the biggest question I had. Are those supposed to be actual wings, or are they supposed to be more like a hang glider? Because, Digimon does not generally respect the laws of physics when it comes to its own character design. So I wanted to know which conceit they were going to go with. They went with the hang glider one.
I mean, I think it's reflecting, it's Digimon Ghost game, and like any modern open world video game, you have to give them a glider mechanic. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, they should have showed us his stamina meter.
Yeah.
I did notice if you're looking at like the profiles for each of the evolutions, Beryl is supposed to be when he's like excited, and then Chaos is when he's in a calm or focused mood.
Interesting. So like the fact that his evolutions come in different colors, and even referred to it like, I think Hiro says like, oh, he evolved into blue this time. It's like a mood ring almost.
It's almost, yeah.
Okay, there are 2 things I found really silly about the debut. And first is that, they need Digimon that can fly, and it's like, Angoramon's right there. Angoromon can fly better because he doesn't need the glider part. He can just go anywhere. The other part is the part where like he needs the gust of air coming from the ground so that he can go up higher. I was like, oh, that was silly. Like, why was there a gust of air there? That was very contrived, but oh well.
It's very cute.
Yeah. But yeah, and the fact that the Calsgamon hits Yadagamon and Yadagamon just leaves, and that's it. And there's no reason. And then Angoramon just talks about like, oh, some birds just want to be free. And it's like, I guess that's a reason why.
Look, it's like booping a shark on the nose. You just punch it right there, it turns around and goes away.
Is that life advice you're going to give to people?
Yes, you should punch sharks in the nose. This is certified medical advice from Prodigious Podcast.
Oh, no. Oh. But yeah, apparently, so this episode was directed by Kakudo of Original Adventure fame.
Yes.
And apparently, I heard that he, on Twitter, mentioned that, he had, like, at the stage that he was envisioning the episode, they weren't calling it Birds yet. And if he had known they were going to call it Birds, he would have thrown in more Alfred Hitchcock references.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate that, like, okay, when I was doing it, I didn't know we were going to call it Birds. But, like, the whole reason that we associate horror with birds, like the whole fact that this is like an episode about crows and birds and seems like a horror concept, is because of the Alfred Hitchcock film Birds. Like, I don't know, I feel like you didn't need to call it Birds to want to throw in those references.
He said actually he meant it to be more, quoting him, more Daniel Mann than Hitchcock.
Oh.
So when I looked into Daniel Mann's discography, I am not a cinema buff, just like full disclosure. It sounds like he was trying to make Willard, but with birds.
What is that, Willard?
Willard, which is about rats, actually.
Oh.
But it's about somebody who, decides that humanity sucks and decides to befriend, the rats and starts trying to set the rats on everybody.
I cannot wait for our Jurassic Park episode.
Oh. Just unleash all of Gamon's evolutions. Actually, they're all dinos, right? Yeah. I guess Weisengamon has the most dino.
I think that to compensate for the fact that we didn't learn Daigo's name in the episode, when he reappears later on, they must state his full name every time he shows up.
Or maybe the other characters will start referring to like, oh yeah, you know Daigo, that guy we talked about. And it's like, what? Who are you talking about?
For some reason now, I'm just thinking about Steven Stone, whose name in Japanese is Daigo.
From Pokemon.
Who is that? What is that?
Steven Stone in Pokemon.
Oh, I don't even know who this character is.
What? Jeff, how old are you?
Which generation is this? I fell out of Pokemon after Gen 2. So I wasn't around for Gen 3.
Whoa. Okay. All right.
Okay. Moving on. Before we start getting in a fight here. Moving on.
I'm going to make you play Ruby and Sapphire. They're great.
I know they're good. Thinking about Alfred Hitchcock just reminds me that I still don't know how to interpret this story, that when I was in 8th grade in English class, we watched a scene of Psycho, and at the end of class, the teacher like pulled me aside and was like, Jeff, I think you should watch this whole film, and gave me a VHS of Psycho. And I'm like, I look back on that and I'm like, what was she implying? What was she implying? I think what it probably was is that I was like showing particular interest in the cinematography or something. But also, did she think I was Psycho? I don't know. I'll never know for sure.
Or will you?
Yeah, Mrs. Walter. Turns out Mrs. Walter is a listener of Podages.
Yeah, she'll be in your comments.
Yeah. This is like that Adele moment where she pulled up her middle school English teacher on the stage. Anyway, yeah, this episode had winter outfits. That was the best part of it for me.
Winter outfits. We only saw that in 02 and Atmon, so
Also an improvement over episode 6.
generally speaking, yes. It is real. Like, okay, so we've been like criticizing like the hell out of this episode, but on the bright side, we did actually get like a proper understanding of what
Right.
everybody's roles in the group.
Oh yeah.
So like Hito is like kind of the organizer, sort of in a sense, and Rudy is like she is a social media manager, so she can get like information if she just needs to ask like, hey, any of my followers know this, and like people can provide her with information. And Kiyoshiro is the one who like sets up everything and does like the analysis and the genius hacking ability things.
Right, so if they were going to steal the Declaration of Independence, Hiro would be up front actually taking the object. He'd be the one wearing the nice suit. Kiyoshiro would be in the van.
And Kotaro, Hiro's friend, would just be hitting on girls the whole time. They're being gross.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I don't know. He appeared again this episode and knew about the bird club because he's gross. I don't know. Could have been worse. But yeah, the fact that the winter outfits, you're saying they're only in 02 Atmon and this season? I mean, that's a good trend line, I think.
Basically, those are the only like two where they were really clear about like this is the timing of the episodes was roughly in correspondence with the actual month or time period it aired. And like in for Ghost Game, we actually knew this as early as episode 2, I think, because his application to be out for the day had the date on it. It was exact same date the episode aired.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, we already had hints that this was going to be the case. But I think it's a nice thing for like, you know, you don't have to do it, but for like series that are set in the real world, if you have it like timed to real world chronology like that, you feel the passing of the seasons, you feel a little closer sense of reality. So I do appreciate that. I think this was unfortunately probably a lot of people following 02 dub didn't get to experience that because of delayed airing, but in Japan, yes, that was the case. The 02 back in the day, up until the Christmas episode, then the time starts shifting a little bit, but that used to be the case back then.
Yeah, I like how that whole season like is roughly following real world chronology, and then it gets to like the holiday season. It's like, no, let's all just compress it down and spend the rest of the season.
But they had a Christmas episode.
Yeah,
they had a Christmas episode. One of only 2 Christmas episodes we've had so far. We may have a third one this time. Who knows?
Yeah, it's weird that we've only had that many Christmas episodes, but we have all of these Christmas albums. Like, you can hear Terriermon singing Jingle Bells if you want.
I mean, I don't think anything will top the concept of having to save Christmas because the calendar app has gone haywire. Like,
it's funny because I have a Dojinshi calendar with like made with like that was like all Digimon series up until the reboot, and like for certain ones they try to like match up like certain months to like how relevant it was the series. So like, you know, August is obviously adventure and all that, and it's funny that like 02 is like the Christmas one because that was the one where like Christmas was like super front and center in the actual yeah. Atmon was Hada's birthday, so I think that's why it wasn't Atmon. But
well, I mean, this was an episode. Moving on to episode 8. Nightly Procession of Monsters, which it was a lot. This was such a fun episode.
It was a lot.
Everything happens so much, Jeff. So much.
Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but I was having fun, so I'm not complaining, but like, I was just like, where do I even start with this episode?
Yeah, especially after 6 and 7, like my excitement level was pretty low. I also episode 8 came out while I was traveling and didn't really have time to watch it right away. So I didn't. I mean, you listeners may have observed that the character poll went up like way late in the week, and that was because I had to watch the
Right.
episode before I could make the character poll. So like,
Right.
especially because this one. Well, I mean, I texted my boyfriend. I was like, if there's only one new character, it's like, okay, I can just write the name of the character. But he was like, yeah, there's like 6 new characters. And I was like, oh, okay, because I should watch the episode. So yeah, I went into it being like, oh, I'll get around to it and it'll be fine, I guess. Like, especially the teaser. I feel like in some of these episodes, the preview has been not better than the episode, but like has hyped it up a lot more than it has hyped up the horror angle more than the episode actually lived up to. And the teaser for this one seemed so bland. It was like,
it didn't tell you anything.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of monsters. Okay. And then the episode was so good. It really blew me away.
But oh my god. First of all, I'm a little surprised they didn't translate it as pandemonium, because that is the general like localization term you use for this for the episode title. It is like a general standardized concept of like a parade of yokai, except this time it's Digimon. But I'm okay with Nightly Procession of Monsters, but I was just a little surprised.
The thing that bummed me out about Nightly Procession of Monsters seemed so... It's a very weirdly worded way of saying it. And then what made me bummed about it as the translation is that if you just, like put in Hyaki Yagyo into jisho.org, that is the like number one definition. It's literally Nightly Procession of Monsters. So I was like, did they literally just like look up in the dictionary and be like, okay, word for word? That's kind of bummed me out.
Because generally speaking, localization will usually call it pandemonium, and that is also a very apt description of what on earth happened in this episode.
Yeah.
This was like the Mario Kart episode.
Mario Kart, but with knife shoes.
Okay, wait. The one part that explicitly made me think of, I thought overall this episode had really fun animation. Something about like Sistermon Ciel having the cross in her eyes. I think it reminds me of Trigger. So like I inherently am like, oh man, this looks so cool. But also she was animated really well most of the episode. But there were a couple moments where she was just, especially I think it's when she like first steals the go-kart and they literally just, it's like Super Nintendo Mario Kart level animation of like dragging the go-kart across like the grass and stuff. And I was like, okay. It was bad in that one like second moment, but it was bad in the way that reminded me of Mario Kart. So I was like, okay, it's fine. But aside from that, animation I thought was fantastic and really, really fun.
There was so many things going on around there. Like, I like the fact that like they had to actually post like a Twitter post talking about like clarifying that normally Ciel is calm and like composed and all that, but she just goes nuts when she grabs the wheel, just to remind everybody that yes, like in the official lore, she is supposed to be calm and composed. Don't worry, we do remember the lore. We just wanted to make a very fun episode about go-karting.
I acknowledge the lore and I choose to ignore it.
That's basically how it was.
Yeah, it's funny because like one of the things we praised Adventure 2020 so much for was adherence to the like null canon lore, and some aspects of this show too, in terms of like the origin of Digimon as a virus. But then this, like, it's also really fun when there's like throw the lore in the trash and just do something crazy and fun.
Nun in a go-kart. Crazed nun in a go-kart who summons a demon. There's so much to unpack there.
Also, Toya kind of referenced it, how this episode made him think of Frontier. And I did at one point, I was like, okay, conceptually, this is just the Wacky Racers concept from Frontier. But the fact that it's actual go-karts in the real world just felt so absurd and so fun that I was like, oh my god, I love this so much more.
Also, people are gonna die. People are dying this episode. They're world of lighting everybody here.
Also, weirdly, this one is less skippable than the Wacky Racers episode from Frontier because, it came in right at the end, but this introduced the idea of digital gates.
But Ubercat shows up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ubercat.
Your Blacktailmon MVP.
In a rice cooker. In a rice cooker. Why a rice cooker?
They did it from laptops in 02, and now it's rice cookers. New technology.
This is sending me back to the whole Dragon Ball rice cooker thing with Piccolo getting sealed away in a rice cooker.
That's fitting considering all the names in Dragon Ball are food. He is a pickle, so.
Also, coming back with my meta jokes, Sistermon Ciel is voiced by Yukana, who is not only a very famous voice actress, but was also Lalamon back in Savers, which is a very big difference. And that Kokuamon, who spoke for like maybe 3 lines, plays Iori and Aradimon back in 02. And everybody who knows like her voices for either of the 2 characters like recognized recognized that voice immediately. And it was kind of like, wait, was that Ura? That's like a little distracting there. For like a bit roll for like 3 lines.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Who knows if it's like COVID restrictions in Japan letting up a little bit, or if it is reprioritizing the budget towards things that aren't animation. But like, it's such a breath of fresh air. All the voice talent in these episodes compared to Adventure 2020.
There's a lot more experienced voice actors on the show, and that's actually very unusual for Toei productions in general. Like,
it's kind of scary. I don't know. Like,
they usually go for a mix of having like new blood and experienced voice actors. That is very standard. I think that's like an actual official policy they have. Like, they want to train up the new blood alongside having the confirmed name. So like back in Tamers, you had like freaking Nozawa Masako as Gilmon, right? But then like next to her was like Tsumura Makoto playing Takato, who's was fairly new-ish to the industry at the time, and like that is generally the case. For the lead protagonist, they try to have like a slightly lesser known name compared to some really big names. But like this cast has been almost entirely been big names compared to their prior, with like the closest to not big names being like Tamara Mutsumi, who plays Hiro. But even then, she just got a major role in JoJo, so it's not like she's completely unknown, right? So that was something. But like, someone said that it's probably that they're going all in to like attract voice actor fans, because like, this series doing well is so life or death. And even then, like, Sawashiro Miyuki is definitely like famous. She's been in Digimon like multiple times, to the point that they even made it like a joke tweet about it recently. But this is a very rare kind of role for her. I don't think everybody who knows her portfolio is like, well, Jeff knows this because he's in my Grandma Clue, but I was expecting, like, whenever like you say like Sawashiro Miyuki, I'm expecting like Catalina from Grand Blue Fantasy, and this is definitely not Catalina. Gamamon is a very unique role for her, and I am extremely impressed by the range she has.
I guess she went from cuddling with, I don't know how, oh god, I can't pronounce the dragon in Grand Blue Fantasy. I'm not going to pronounce Vern, but it's pronounced B, right?
Well, I think it's just a localization change. It's supposed to be V,
dub name changes.
They change it to Vern.
Yeah, so Vern. Well, she became Vern in Gamamon, basically.
I think another thing that's really like made this episode so enjoyable, even though there wasn't any new introduction of like evolution or anything like that, was that really the star of the episode is actually Ruri, not Hiro. And like the fact that they started introducing the fact that she's competitive with racing even beforehand, and so they use her, that like the fact that she's better than anyone else to like help set up Sistermon Ciel. And it's more of like, I think it's very important to continue, like, even if it's very subtly, even if they're not like making a huge big show about it, it is very important that we get as much drip feed as possible of what the group dynamic is. Maybe I'm saying this because I come from Zero 2, where that was basically like how the series practically worked, or actually Atmon is similar too, where it's not just like where they show you like, oh, this is how the group is going to work. Like, they're not going to say it like up in front, but it is like subtly you build those things. You see how the relationships change, how they bounce off each other. You do need to kind of like drip feed that. And so it is very nice that even in like episode 8, we get like more of that kind of banter and a better grasp of how this group is going to keep working.
Yeah, I loved the general banter. I think there was one moment that really shone in terms of like, this is this group dynamic to a T, and it's when Ruli is in the go-kart going really fast, and she's just like, wee, and Hiro is following and is like going slow, and is like, oh man, she's going so fast, and then you just see like his car like slowly drive across the screen, and Kiyoshiro's on the sideline and is like, I'm not getting in a go-kart, like. And then later in the episode, he's just like, I don't think they explain what he's doing. He's just like watching a video before things start to go down. He's just watching a video on his tablet and just looks really happy, just on the sideline, not doing anything. And it's like, that's me. That would be me in that situation.
That's a mood. Like, you go like accompany your friend to emotionally support them, but you don't actually want to do the thing. So you just like take out your phone and start watching videos.
I liked the parallel later in the episode where when they're actually racing, on the spot, Hiro improvises the whole trick to get Sistermon Ciel to actually switch between the machines, because I mean, these are two different scenes designed to show the dynamics between the characters.
I also like the implication that Ruri now likes hanging out with them, even regardless of whether she wants something from them per se, because she took them there because She said guys like this kind of stuff. Like she said she thought they would like it. Like I don't think they would have helped her social media like thing in any way, and she was clearly the one who was more interested in doing the go-kart than they were. But like at the same time, she was basically inviting them out, like, let's hang out. That's, which is very nice.
I appreciate the dual-handed, like, like acknowledging the, I don't want to call it sexist trope, but the reality of boys being more interested in that kind of thing, but then also subverting it and being like, no, she's the one who's much more into it. Like,
she's the one who's into it. Yeah.
Also, okay, the Metal Phantomon, also just like, it's such a clever way to have this like yokai pandemonium, like yokai march concept, and then have it fully explained with like, we just like racing, and then she came along and made it into like a death race, and like oh, it's such a well executed concept. But also Metal Phantomon's mark, like when they all realize like, oh no, we have the mark too, that was also like a really good horror beat.
It was a genre reveal.
Oh no, it's like,
great episode.
I think this is a good warning against like people who are just trying to have fun and then you come and take it way too seriously and spoil everyone's fun. That's the lesson you should take home. Don't do that.
Yeah, Ciel is a melee player.
Oh.
Well, considering she inflicted World of Light on everyone.
I thought you were going to say a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I mean, she came in, she stole, trying to steal cars, trying to steal go-karts. Like...
Yep. I think that in terms of like the pacing of the series and where we are, well, this episode is the lead-in, I think, to something more, that it introduced the digital gates, but it was like very abruptly, so it became a hook for the next episodes, which earlier we talked about the fact that like the teasers for this series are not good. Like they don't really hype you up for what's next or make you super curious. And I think that because of that, the episode events have to be the thing that draws you into the next one.
Well, the other thing is that the alternative is that it spoils the next episode.
Yeah.
Like, they will, like, in past series, they would actually spoil you on a dead character in the episode preview. Like, just reminding you.
I feel like it's not so much that these previews are bad, but they don't actually correlate with the quality of the episode in any concrete way. So like, I feel like the previews for the karaoke episode and the birds episodes, both of those like really sold me on how like intriguing the concept was, and then the episode itself, it wasn't that intriguingly executed. So like, and then episode 8 did not sell me, and then was an amazing episode. So like, they're kind of just random, but also like, I mean, the preview for the episode 9 that's going to be airing by the time you've already listened to this episode, so maybe you'll know if it worked or not, but like, that introduced things that I'm like, oh man, this is really exciting. So will that turn out to be a good episode or not? Who knows? You'll know if you're listening to this podcast, but I won't.
All right, forward reviews. Let's what's the order?
Let's do me, then Esther, then Toya. All right. Drew Softman. Jellymon always chooses violence. Yep.
Aphrodisian ARV. Jellymon-sama plus pointless fun. Is that 5 or 4? I'll call it 4. You know what?
That's 4, Jellymon-sama.
Okay, 4. We'll call it 4. Good, you pass.
At Andy Lucas OE. Damn it, wrong Daigo appeared.
I don't know. I think Nishiji, if you're talking about Nishijima Daigo, I think he also causes a lot of problems. So
I just think of Daigo Stardust anytime anybody says Daigo.
Hey, I was saying that affectionately. Just just.
I'm not a huge fan of Try in any way, but Daigo is absolutely the best part of that
and
series.
he definitely causes problems in doing so. So I'm not sure the events of the episode would have been much better with him around instead.
Well, at PDX Anime said, Angoromon best character confirmed.
At Meg Hannah Dramon, quirk appropriate monster choices.
At Gigary Dramon, excited for Kyo growth.
At Bored Individual, Digimon slice of life. Sistermon Ciel literally tried to slice up some life.
At Dak and Jackster, haunted hobbies, hound heroes. Ooh, I like that one.
That's good.
At CRR McRae, holy Alfred Hitchcock Batman.
Oh boy. At Complear Destino, Digimon es muy bueno.
At Austin LC23, which each word supposed to be corresponding to one episode. Hilarious / colon / quote Daigo unquote elephantmon exclamation point exclamation point exclamation point.
At the Digimon Otaku, this is not 4 words. Each one is 4 words.
Yeah. Yeah, so a couple people have interpreted it liberally and now are doing 4 words per episode, which we'll let slide.
This time.
All right. Jellymon shines the season, reused song, meh singing, avians cause weird chaos, Blacktailmon changes the game.
Yay, Blacktailmon. And at RK Husk, the best one yet, the worst one yet, weird premise, weird execution, and then exciting, ready for plot.
I'm glad we all really seem to have liked the Wacky Races episode.
Yeah. I saw I saw some reactions to it being like, oh, it wasn't like good because it didn't advance the plot, or like it wasn't serious enough, and I was like, what?
Okay,
What?
I don't get that. What?
Yeah.
Did you not see that blacktail opening the rice cooker at the end of the? Did you just miss that? Like, yeah.
Or like, I guess I saw complaints that like the mechanics of what was going on didn't make sense, and I'm like, who needs it to make sense? I mean, I thought it did make sense personally.
Yeah, I did
but also
too.
like,
But
yeah, I saw confusion about like why Sistermon Ciel was attacking cars in the beginning, and I'm like, I thought it's clear because she wanted to steal a car. Is that not clear? I'm confused.
like, no, because people were constantly telling me there's no plot. It doesn't advance the plot. It doesn't advance the plot. The black tailmon at the end just caught me completely off guard because I was just like, wait, you told me. Add Nazaruku. Well, that escalated quickly. Do destroy all doors. Cows rules Beetlejuice. I fully blame Jellymon.
I blame Jellymon for everything now.
I fully blame Jellymon too.
Everything is Jellymon's fault.
Everything is Jellymon's fault. Well, moving on to listener comments and questions. First off from @Coronabono, who said, loving Gammamon, but other than that, my initial expectations have been met. The first episodes introduced interesting characters, but then it becomes only about fighting the monster of the week, activating the digital world, and talking things out on repeat. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is a certain fatigue setting in among some people about like the weekly format, but for me, I feel like these 4 episodes perfectly encapsulate how, like, if it's weekly episodes that are more like episode 5 or episode 8, then I'm all on board, absolutely loving it. If it's weekly episodes more like 6 and 7, I'm like, oh, interest starting to fade.
But you know, with a series like this, you are going to have ups and downs. You know, like I think I know it has such a strong start, and everyone's gonna like, okay, just need to keep this like every single like moment. Like realistically speaking, that's not going to happen. You know, you are going to have weak points. No, even the best series have weak points, and you know this too. So yeah, I understand, but yeah.
Well, PDX Anime said, I want to give big ups to Ghost Game trying to lower the emphasis on fighting. I think the car chase in episode 8 and the resolution in episode 6 were really fun. That being said, I still have questions like what it takes to evolve or how Gammamon chooses his champion form. I think I want to see more of Angoramon and Jellymon to take more of a lead from Gammamon. They have their niches, yes, but I don't want them to be purely supports. Lastly, the Black Tailmon is a real wildcard on Hope, and I wonder if he's responsible for bringing Digimon to our world.
With a rice cooker. I already mentioned the whole thing about like the null canon helping you a little bit about the reason for each evolution, although I don't know how relevant it's going to be, but that is kind of a helper clue. I am actually surprised we didn't have Angoramon and Jellymon evolve yet, but the OP has still promised it, so I'm holding out.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more like disappointing things about this batch of 4 episodes is that we got the second Gammamon before the other of them,
and that we haven't even gotten the other.
That we haven't even gotten one of them yet. And I assume, okay, I will be frustrated there's no like in-world mechanical reason for that, but I'm hopeful that like it's either going to be something about Hokuto doing something to Gammamon that made him special at this point, and they'll eventually be special as well, or it's from Clockmon, like starting to accelerate his growth or something.
Right.
Or Diginomes did it.
Oh, let's not do that.
As long as that's what I don't want. I don't want Diginomes. But I also think it's interesting how these champion evolutions, they feel more like armors, especially in how they are named as literally just adjective on top of their child forms. Like, I feel like that is closer to the concept of armor forms than actual armors were in Execution sometimes.
Well, the one thing where it resembles armors a lot is that you can tell there's a specific specialty to each evolution. There's a very particular niche that it filled. Because like even in 0-2, even when they get their secondary armors, like they're still using the first a lot for like specific needs.
Yeah, so it's I don't know. It's kind of the format of like adjective plus child form is interesting. But anyway, @AustinLC23 said, I've been seeing a lot of complaints about the pacing, but I don't get it. Adventure, Savers, and Tamers all have drawn up first arcs. At the very least, Ghost Games isn't formulaic like Adventure/Colon's non-stop evolution episodes. It also feels like all the characters share screen time well. Even in the Chaos-Gammon episode, we got a lot of Ruli, Kiyoshiro, and Angoramon and Jellymon doing and interacting, beyond saying the partners' names repeatedly.
Okay, so first of all, Atmon is also another one that has like a super drawn-out beginning to the point like people have actually complained about it. I think it's actually not as bad as Adventure and Savers and Tamers about it, but it is also like technically in that category. I think with 50 episode series like these, and I'm used to this because I watch like the Chiasa Kids Time and like all that stuff when I like have been through this rodeo so many times that I'm used to it. But I understand a lot of people who are watching Ghost Game right now are more used to watching seasonal anime at this point, where things are usually going to be around like 1 core, 2 core, so 12 episodes, 24 episodes or so. You cannot apply the 3 episode rule to that, like to a thing that is like 50 episodes. Like it's not paced the same way. And my friend who I've been introducing Digimon to lately comes from a Yu-Gi-Oh background, where like there's a whole like 3 seasons of like one series. And they also complained that people keep trying to like apply like a metric that is more for like shorter season anime that is for like long kid shows like this. This is normal, and if you compare other kid shows, including other Digimon series, as to how much plot we covered in episode 8, you're not gonna see that much. Like Adventure, we just introduced Joe. We barely kind of have an idea of what a plot is. In Atmon, we barely just introduced Astana. Like, like Savers was still in the middle of the Monster of the Week section. Like, eventually they all kicked off, but it took a while because it was a whole 50 episodes. Like, like it's long. And there was a whole bit of discourse the other day about how somebody was saying like Cowboy Bebop actually has a ton of fillers. And like I complained about this the first time I came onto this podcast, but like filler used to mean when a manga adaptation has to catch up, or it already caught up, so it needs like more time to stall. So filler is just like original story that you put in to like stall for time. But now people are just using it to apply. It doesn't advance the plot that much. And it's weird for me to see people using this in application to Digimon, where generally speaking, people want narratives about the characters, which means we are going to need like organic character banter. And that, especially like again in Adventure, which is what everybody is like practically using their standard of comparison, is like barely had any plot moving very quickly because it was so much about the characters. So we are going to need these little vignettes. Like my favorite example of this is like, for those who know Avatar: The Last Airbender, there is only one episode in that entire series, like individual episode, that has its own Wikipedia page, and it's the Tales of Ba Sing Se, which is nothing but slice of life vignette. But that was like the award-winning episode that got its own like Wikipedia page because that was like the one we really got to see like an ordinary day in those characters' lives. Arguably, when you don't have those things, you don't connect to the characters as well. And arguably that might be one of the major reasons like Cross Wars gets so many complaints, because it advanced the plot so fast that it never really slowed down with the characters. So it's kind of like, you have to, I get like why, you want to feel impatient about these kinds of things, but at the same time, when you think about how we're going to have to look back at this series in the long run and how much we're learning about this, having episodes like these are really important. And I don't want to like have the plot get rushed so much that like we don't know anything about the characters. This is why like I really don't like the idea as a 02 fan. I don't like the fact when people downplay the computer room scenes, because just them doing nothing at all and like chatting about their lives lately is actually really important. So that's how I feel.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is reducing things down to be too simple and basic of an idea, but like I feel like the only reason like the idea of the plot progressing and like moving to a new phase is exciting is if you're tired of the current format, right? And I feel like I was saying before, like this episode, this chunk of episodes is introduced the potential that like if we got 5+ episodes in a row of the Curse Song or Birds episode quality, then yeah, I also would be like, come on, they need to kick it into high gear. But like considering we've had so many great episodes in the mix as well, I'm like, like getting more character development, getting more like living these characters' lives is fun. I don't know, like it.
And like we're coming out of colon, or like the reboot or whatever you want to call it, and we were so deprived of that for the most part that I'm clutching onto these things like, thank you for giving this to me right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the criticism of where the series is at this point, when I said before that I was missing Frontier, but at the very least, like our episode 8 here was not Frontier's episode 8, which had Tsunomon and the freaking village that was going to get flooded and washed away. And that's probably one of the most boring episodes in Digimon history of anything.
That was my first episode of Frontier.
Every time I go back to Frontier, it feels like a terrible slog trying to get through that. And then the episode right after it where Tomoki gets like brainwashed and attacks the group. But
like, here's my case in point. How much did you know about Frontier's plot by episode 8?
Well, we already had our first of the evil legendary warriors by then, because that was introduced in episode 6 with Grottomon, which I think he was Grumblemon in the dub. So this series, like in terms of hook episodes, like really strong episodes that you could see them and it would pull you in with some kind of interesting premise or character dynamic. Like we already had a really good one for this series with episode 4, with the Pumpmon and the infamous the serial killer episode, I call it now. Frontier, when I think of like the hook episodes on that, most of the early episodes don't fall in, even though they're like actually requiring their spirits pretty rapidly. But the toy episode where they are on the island with the black Agumon that want to invade the human, or the black toy Agumon that want to invade the human world and get revenge on children. That is an oddly enough a hook episode for me, because you get more inside of like Takia and Tomoki and Blue Boy, what's your name in this series? Yes, Koji. Inside their dynamics, that you have like this competing big brother mentality between the two of them, of like spoiling Tomoki versus being strict with him. And that one is very driven by just the individual characters. And Digimon fans say like, oh, we care about the characters, we're not like those animals that watch Pokemon only for the fight scenes. But I think that's a lie that Digimon fans tell themselves to sleep at night.
Well, I think they care about the characters, but very few fans are capable of vocalizing what they mean about characters. Like my friend who watched Crosswords recently complained this was her first time watching Crosswords like ever, and the only thing she'd heard about it was like fan-based discourse. And she complained, I have no idea what the hell people are talking about when they say the characters don't have depth. There is a ton of depth, and you can write entire essays like unpacking these characters. The problem is that the characters are not very relatable because they're so busy like accelerating the plot that it's you have to like think about these characters in theory rather than feeling them personally close to you. So what do you want when you want character development? Do you want a character with a very interesting, like thought-provoking character narrative that you may not relate as well with, or do you want something like adventure where it hits home to almost terrifying degrees, you know? And then, you know, then adventure, you have the one about the individual person. 02, you have it about the group dynamic, you know? Like there's like so many quote character development quote ways of writing that like when you say this is about the character, you know, that doesn't even mean anything to me anymore. Or you can be like Adventure 2020 where they like spelled out the words like this is like, you know, this is an episode about this character today, but you know, as everyone pointed out, we didn't actually learn very much. Or like versus, you know, older series, and especially like Adventure in 02. Oh, not so much Original Adventure, maybe more so 02, kind of like Atmon and such, is like where like they don't necessarily like smack like, you know, this is an episode about this, and the focus episode are actually a very small count, but like you do still see them like intimately with a lot of those like, you know, character bouncing off each other moments. So like, what is character development? You need to question that before you demand something, you know?
Well, I can tell you that what I'm missing from this series right now is something that Crosswords definitely had by this point, which is a consistent antagonist that is actually like driving the characters in some way, where they are conversing with or opposing with them somehow. Because Crosswords had Baggermon's generals right from episode 1, which Baggermon himself is like the big headliner antagonist, but you don't really see him that often, and instead you have those individual personalities throughout the show. And
which I think this is actually why the Saver's first 11 episodes get so much criticism, because you don't know what like you are actually fighting against other than like slogging, working for the government until episode 12. You know,
right.
Like that's what I mean by like in terms of, as much as we say it's because Ghost Game is episodic, it's actually kind of smack in the middle in terms of pacing, because we have some really slow examples in this franchise and in like kids shows in general, and we also have extremely fast ones like Crossword 02 Frontier.
And Colon had a whole lot of nothing running throughout it, because we'd have Millenniumon talked about a lot. We didn't really get to know Millenniumon at any point.
It's so easy to say like, this is the reason why, this is the reason why, this is the reason why it did do this, it didn't do this, but there's so many factors that, you know, you have to clear out.
Right, like I would be more excited about where the series is going if there was a clear antagonist they're fighting, like making progress towards. But other things are so exciting too. And like you're saying about character development, like I think I've probably been guilty of this too, that we often in fandom circles refer to like the idea of character development as like a monolithic pillar. Like, does it have character development? Then it's good. Doesn't have character development? Then it's bad. But it's like there are different types of character development, different types of characters, and you know, like like you're saying, there might be more shallow development with characters that are more relatable, that's more enjoyable, or deeper development with characters that aren't as relatable. And so it's all subjective in different axes and stuff. And so like, I don't know, I feel like the series is on the right path, and it like could be a little more exciting, but also like still seems to be, I don't know, it could be more exciting, it could be not.
Well, you know, I'm coming out of the reboot.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, for what it's worth, I am still somewhat enjoying every episode every week, and even especially once I lowered my expectations. And I am enjoying every episode of this series more than I enjoyed any episode of the reboot so far.
Yeah. When I think of like where each Digimon series gets going for me, it is when you have a meaningful antagonist that clashes with the characters on some level of like their ideals. Like Frontier, there's a lot more momentum to it once you have the Dark Legendary Warriors introduced, and of course later on Luchamon's followers. Cross Wars, you have Baggermon's generals, and then of course later on Dark Nightmon, who is very pivotal to that whole series. Part of the reason that I wasn't invested in Colon is that the characters were being put into all these moments of crisis, but it never felt like they were personally being tested on like an ethical or personal level in the way that like Cross Wars got into. And this series, I feel like we're on the cusp of something with well, you know, episode preview stuff, characters coming back. Anyway, I think that our complaints about the plot issues and the pacing, that's going to evaporate as soon as we have a consistent antagonistic force in the show that actually, it feels like it's testing the characters in some way.
You know, I told you, I'm showing a friend Adventure right now, 2 episodes of Ghost Game a week. I mean, 1 episode of Ghost Game, 2 episodes of Adventure a week. Adventure still has not picked up, despite the fact we are watching it at twice the pace. So, you know, I'll just put that there.
Yeah. I also think that there's the potential problem of like the villain being too stagnant, which is a problem I felt like I had with Cross Wars and Atmon and stories like Final Fantasy 12, where it's like set up a villain at the beginning and then in the end that's what you're fighting. It's like, I don't know, I much prefer 0-2 style of like set up a clear antagonist and then like finding out there's more behind that antagonist as you go along.
Right. Yes, I guess it depends on your taste, you know?
Yeah, like everything, I guess. Okay, and skipping past a couple of comments that I wanted to read, but we're running low on time. Meg Haddington said, how do you think they choose which Digimon will go with each spooky ghost story? I can see a dragon typically found in hoarding gold being connected to money, a bird saving other birds, and a songbird/harpy being for karaoke, but a nun in a race?
I think it was because the nun summoning a demon is a really hilarious juxtaposition.
That makes sense. Yeah. I thought it was just random and absurd, but that makes a lot of sense. I think it's especially funny how like, I mean, the origin of Ciel. I mean, I think a lot of people say that she's just a censorship creation, but I think it's more complicated than that.
Have you all forgotten Sistermon? I would much rather have this than Sistermon because she got added to the official lore and is actually treated like a distinct entity. Honestly, I don't really get why people get so worked up about the fact that it went from a cat black veil to a blue mouse veil. What is the difference? Like,
because they think that it's stupid and it shouldn't have happened.
I mean, that's not even Bandai's fault. Do you know how restrictive like ratings boards and other like things are? Like they will send back things and force you to redo the entire thing if you know you don't comply. So it's like, even if they're being overly paranoid, like there's a lot of really horrible consequences that happen if you don't comply with, like, you know, like I think there's definitely some level of hypocrisy about like why offending the Catholics is bad, but offending other religions not so much. But like, that's not something I can hold against Bandai per se, because I know for a fact that like the market regulators are like the ones that enforce that on everybody, you know?
Yeah, and I've seen some of the frustration I've seen is on the card game side, like anger that like, oh, well, like clearly the English version of the game is never going to get Sistermon Noir, but the Japanese version, they'll clearly get Ciel at some point too. And it's like, why do you assume that and then get angry based on those assumptions, which may or may not happen? Probably not, I'm thinking, but like it hasn't happened yet, so why get mad preemptively? Like,
also, like, please stop asking official about this on Twitter, because I don't think they can do anything about it. It's not really like something they have much of a choice in the matter, you know?
And I mean, I don't know, it feels like they gave this really fun personality to the character that is in English versions of things and not in Japanese versions. Like, I don't know, like that.
Also, to address, you know, the question of, because I've seen a few people bring this up, whether Ciel was used to make this like export and localization friendly, because in the anime it would be very difficult to export the anime if they use Noir. But I think that may be one reason. So it's just like I don't think that definitively confirms that there might be like a dub or something, but it does like at least mean that like they're covering their bases. But I think the other reason is that this episode's plot depended on the Sistermon in question doing close combat with a katana, because Sistermon Noir has guns, but because the thing was they needed her to ditch the cart and go all the way back to fight Metal Phantomon, right? So she needed to have like the knife shoes and the like actually fight with a katana. That's specifically a Ciel thing. So like that's the one major difference between like her and Noir, like beyond just like color and hoodie shape. So there was actually some use to that.
Yeah, and I think also like whether potential dubs are in the work or not, I mean it could also mean like that this would be a sensitive issue. Like in France, Atman was dubbed in French long before
Yeah.
I mean it ever got subtitled officially in English. So like it could be for all sorts of markets to make it possibly more palatable. Who knows? But yeah, I think I agree with that. That like also just I don't know. I find it a little bit funny that like a nun with a gun is dangerous to rating boards, but like a nun with a sword is not. Like to me, those both seem weird.
I know her name is Sistermon.
Yeah.
Just because you made it blue now, suddenly that's okay. But
yeah, I mean, it's all. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's all hypocritical, but like you do have to play within the rules of the hypocrisy to exist in the world. That sucks. But yeah. So at Digimon said, I'm seeing a few members of the fandom picking out inconsistencies with the Digimon / hologram growth that may have gone more unnoticed in a more fantastical setting. Although I don't want here to sit down and explain all the technology, I feel the not quite plot holes like this appear easier with the quote-unquote hard sci-fi that Ghost Game is using, such as being invisible but able to see or have things phase out through, but being able to touch humans or items. Not a problem for me, but an interesting discussion nonetheless. Also, wish this was the weekly podcast rather than Adventure 2020. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, I think for me personally, like once asked to point out that it's more like playing by ghost logic last month, I was like, oh, now I'll click into place and I'm like, I don't care about these details anymore because it's like ghosts are weird. Ghosts have weird logic. Like that's it. Like
Jeff complained about this earlier, but I think Tamers, which is probably the second most hard sci-fi after Atmon, pulled out the Diginomes and Alice after a point. Like it totally Deus Ex Machina at that. For all like everybody like plays up how like supposedly realistic it is, and even Atmon does not explain everything. It doesn't explain how App Realize works. It doesn't explain how like AR fields work. There's a certain point you got to stop. So there's a certain point you do have to kind of ask the audience to just like accept it, please. Thank you very much. And I think they did actually say in an interview later that they are tentatively planning to reveal the reason why sometimes they are visible to humans and sometimes are not. I'm not sure if I'm going to hold them to that later, but they did actually promise that. So
yeah, for me it's like I mean, I feel like it doesn't really feel like hard sci-fi to me because like for me what makes it feel like hard sci-fi is like the existence of things like Hypnos or DATS, like organizations in universe that are like scientific organizations that to them they think they understand how things work. And here it's like, I mean, I guess Hero's dad maybe might be like that eventually, but for now it's like to these kids it's all kind of magic. So even if it is technically technology, but to the last comment about wishing this was a weekly podcast instead of 2020, I mean, I get that sentiment. That's totally fair. I personally feel like like stepping back and doing this in a monthly format is not just a matter of like decreasing the workload or whatever. Like I honestly think it makes a better product to listen to. Like I feel like I don't know, like going into every episode of Adventure 2020 like really affected the lens at which I was looking at the show. And I feel like this show in particular, like really, like we've alluded to before, like I think it's better appreciated in chunks. And I also think it makes it a better like listening experience where like if people have dipped out and haven't watched, like 10 episodes in a row, the prospect of listening to 10 podcasts about 10 episodes is like, oh my God. But like, oh, you're listening to 2 podcasts. Okay. I think that's more manageable and stuff. So like, I hope that this makes the podcast more accessible and not as intimidating. And like, you need to be keeping up week to week because that pressure, like there's pressure for me as a creator, but also pressure as a listener and a viewer and stuff. And like, I think it's better if people can dip in and out when they have time, casually enjoy it and stuff. And so
also, like I said, this is probably going to be like a 50 episodes around source series, and there is a problem, like inherent problems about like evaluating them episode by episode, like they're in a vacuum and not thinking about them in terms of like a longer scope of where it's going to go. Like the fact that we could say like, well, these 2 episodes weren't as good, but we really like these 2 other episodes, and so therefore we have a much more positive outlook rather than if we'd heard like 2 episodes of us raving like everywhere and 2 episodes where we're throwing things at the wall. Like, do you want to hear that? I think it's nice to be able to think of things in like how what in this specific episode, what role did it play in the wider scheme, especially it's I think 4 out of 50 is like a much more reasonable part to talk about rather than like 1/50th of a series.
Yeah, and I think it's a good balance because like in older season when we would do like I forget what the largest chunk we did, but like sometimes if it's like like 6 or higher, it's like it's hard to actually talk about the meat of those episodes if they have a lot of meat, and it feels like you're just breezing by. So like with 4, I think we can get to the meat. We can also not get lost in the weeds too much.
I think if we did this week by week, we would get to episode 6 and be like, nothing happened. That's it. 10-minute podcast. Nothing happened.
I thought that would happen with Adventure 2020 all the time, and it never did. And it's like I also felt like with Adventure 2020, especially towards the end, like I felt like, I forget if I've expressed this on the podcast before, but like I would listen back to myself and be annoyed at myself for being so repetitive and like bringing up the same ideas over and over. And like, I was like, as a listener, I don't know how that, like, I feel like this makes it much more fresh and interesting and exciting. And I hope that's the case.
I think even with like a supposedly perfect, series, you are going to have some episodes that are faster paced and some episodes that are slower paced. And if we try to cover that week to week, that would mean that some podcast episodes are going to be a lot more boring than others.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there is something fun to like have a companion as you're going through stuff that sucks or is boring or whatever. Like, but also like, I think this does a better service to the show, if that makes sense. Well, I think we should get into closing thoughts on the episode since I need to run to a Digimon card game tournament. But, so for me, I'm going to rate these episodes, I think a 5 stars for episode 5, a 2 stars, 2 star for episode 6, and then 1.5 for 7, and then back to 4.5 for episode 8, kind of a little roller coaster.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4 for episode 5. That's the one with the, that's
the Jellymon debut.
The Jellymon introduction. I'm going to do 2 for the karaoke one. Probably 3 for the birds, just for the better group dynamic, and then finally 5 for the death races.
I'm gonna concur with Aster with a 4 for episode 5 and a 2 for episode 6. And I agree with the 3 for episode 7. 7 I felt was an improvement on 6. But for episode 8, I'm only giving it 4 stars. I felt checked out most of it, actually. For most of that episode, I was like, okay, here's our spooky premise of the week, but what does this mean for the series as a whole? And I didn't really get the bigger picture stuff until like the last minute.
See, I'm the kind of person to, if we're going to be rating this in a vacuum, I just want to rate it by how fun it was too. So even if it like didn't actually contribute that much to the plot, it was funny. So I like to give it that.
Yeah, it's weird because like if I hadn't been, I felt like I was riding such a fun roller coaster while I was watching it.
Yeah.
And looking back, I'm like, okay, well, this is very similar to the Wacky Races episode of Frontier. And it's like, is it actually that fun? But like when I went back and rewatched it, I was like, it still captured that energy and stuff. And so like, yeah.
Execution is a lot, you know?
See, I didn't even like the Wacky Races episode the first time. It's not the kind of episode I'm looking to watch.
I see.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy it in Frontier.
Frontier, I feel like, is a series that sometimes took itself more seriously than its premise should suggest, and maybe that's why a lot of people tend to like kind of feel like it was lesser than what it was selling it itself as. But I think that's maybe an essay for another day. That is more about Frontier than it is about Ghost Game. So,
well, I think I am contractually obligated. I think I called that I would say this month, and they did appear in the last minute, so I think I have to give Ghost of the Month to Black Tailmon again. It's also weird that we got like an official profile for Black Tailmon, and this is now an official like alternate version called Uber, like
Black Tailmon Uber, like Uber Eats.
Yeah, Black Tailmon Uber, and I've seen some speculation and confusion about it. I think it's like a reference to Uber. I mean, I think that B versus V gets kind of lost in going back and forth between Japanese. Like the rock group Uberworld, their name is based on the word Uber. So like, yeah, I think it's common to localize that into a V for Japanese people. Also, I think the dot at the end is just like kind of like Uber, like version.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's a joke on version, but it's Uber.
So I don't think there's any like mystery to be solved there. I think it's just, it's cute. Like they deliver things, and it's like an Uber kind of
a parody of Uber. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're cute. Yes.
By the way, all the Japanese fans seem to agree with Jeff's theory that it's a reference to Kuroneko Yamato.
Oh, okay. So nice.
I'm gonna give it to Sistermon Ciel. That was just good.
Yeah. I wish I could if I wasn't contractually obligated.
I'll give it to Uber also. Those like 5 seconds.
That would probably be my second. Rice cooker.
Well, it turned the episode around from being a wacky monster of the week to the beginning of an actual like longer term hook. What is going on in the series? That's the thing that I've been wondering from like day one with Hiro's dad and everything. What is going on with the Digimon appearing in the world? Why are they appearing, and why did his dad disappear? And I'm hoping that this is our hook into that.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about riding too much on that.
Expectations too high, but
saying too much on that. But like, hopefully we look back on that and like that was kind of like the hook that brought us in.
Well, Hiro was, I'm on it like this because Hiro was from episode 1 trying to figure out what happened to his dad and asking about the digital world. All the way back in the Mummymon episode, he was originally trying to ask Digimon about the digital world and like, what is that? How do I get to it? But we've kind of gotten sidetracked from that because of the character focus we have going on right now. And so I think that the presence of gates that potentially could lead to the digital world is going to push us back into that thread.
And Hito asked about it too. Like, wait, wasn't that the
Yeah.
digital world? Wait, doesn't that mean? And then like, but then, you know, we got sidetracked because Kiyoshiro had to like ollie out. So
Yeah. And looking back at the episode rating polls from Twitter, like it kind of unsurprising that like there was a dip for 6 and 7, but like generally people are still pretty, like didn't dip that far.
Yeah.
Bounce back for episode 8, went really high for episode 5, to be expected. I think the character poll data is pretty interesting in that like I thought that Gabumon would dominate every week, but like I mean Jellymon had a big showing for her debut, but then in episode 6 it was like very evenly split, and then for 7 Angormon was very high, and then 8 Sistermon Ciel dominated.
But it means we're having a very fun and lovely cast of characters. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like if it was the same one every week, I think that would be a sign of boredom, and it seems like people aren't bored yet, so that's pretty cool. So I think we're gonna skip over recommendations because we're running long. So that brings us to the end of the show. Last month's Digiprompt was, what pre-existing Digimon would you want to appear in Ghost Game for a special winter holidays themed episode? And how would they appear both festive and spooky? And my favorite 2 responses came in from Drew Softman, who said, Grand Locomon appearing on Christmas Eve to give children rides to the North Pole and maybe everyone on board are Uncanny Valley CGI nightmares for some reason. Which
I have seen that movie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, every year. I wish I could escape it.
I've never seen it. Is it really that horrifying?
It was revolutionary for its time because it was one of the first movies to use mocap, but it's so aged so badly.
I mean, even when I was watching it when it was new, I thought it was bad.
Well, yeah, I remember at the time it was like people were like, "Oh, this is revolutionary, but maybe not in a good way." Like, yeah. And my other favorite comment came in from First Agent ARP, who said, Luminamon being an elf on the shelf. Nice kids know it's watching them. Naughty kids only have that feeling they're being watched. That I think is also really good.
I was curious about the choice of Luminamon, but otherwise, yes, I think I think everybody's nice and naughty evaluations coming to stare them in the face would be a very interesting kind of horror.
Yeah.
That only the 11-year-olds know.
Well, this month's Digiprompt is, in honor of Sistermon Ciel's obsession with racing, what Digimon would you want to appear in Ghost Game with a surprising quirk not usually associated with them? Send any feedback to podages@email.com, to @podages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on podages.com. Check out the show notes to find a link to join our Discord server and continue the conversation, and share the package with your friends who love Japanese culture so much that they'll get a master's degree in America but then still attend middle school in Japan just to live out their favorite anime. And if this is your first episode, you can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you find podcasts. So let's go around and share where people can find us on the internet. Esther?
I am Atlas Geo on Twitter.
Toya?
I am at Towoya on Twitter, at Maniacs Channel on YouTube, and you can't find me in Final Fantasy XIV, so stop asking.
Okay.
I've had to postpone project deadlines because of Final Fantasy XIV. I just want you all to know that.
And I am Jeff on Twitter, and I am on Final Fantasy XIV with a character named Kenichi Joji, but with silly Final Fantasy spelling. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll be back in 4 weeks to talk about episodes 9 through 12. Bye!
Bye!
And remember, never stop digivolving.
Gotta go back to the Digi world, 'cause Digimon don't get scared. It's spooky, 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 it's spooky
So, well, I guess we'll get to it when we get to the end and have to pick a title. But the main thing I struggled with in brainstorming titles was how we pronounce Ciel, and if we pronounce it like wheel or not.
Ciel? Well, because I guess because I'm used to the Japanese pronouncing the Shieru,
Yeah.
the Ciel,
Censormon.
Shell.
Oh God. The only title I do not want to use is the birds and the NFTs. But
Jeff, that's wonderful.
it's funny, but I don't want to actually use it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem is that the word digital money means something very different in Japanese than it does here. So
For now.
Yeah.
for now, yes, but like that word is very commonly used for things like PayPal and stuff. So
Right. Yeah, there's been I'm sure we'll get to it when we get to the episode, but like there was a lot of like making jokes about cryptocurrency and NFTs and stuff, and it's like, are you doing it just for the joke, or do you actually think?
that's what they were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't tell.
We have a fourth member joining us. My dog is here.
Hi, dog.
I can't tell if that's just because sometimes I like fidget with like random things and they make noise too.
No, I do not fidget. This is my dog clicking around. Primy, do you want to say hi?
What's her name?
Prem.
Prem or Rem?
She came from a Hunger Games litter.
Oh, okay.
I think I tried showing Prim Digimon before. She was not impressed.
I tried showing my nephew Digimon. He was not impressed.
Wait, Toya, wasn't it Try?
You know, it probably, yeah. Prim just has good taste.
I think I remember you actually sent me the picture of like I tried to show Prim Try.
Oh boy. Oh, wait, so back in August, I tried to show the original adventure to my nephew. Obviously, because I can't show subtitles, otherwise, you know,
Right,
I can't
right,
read
right.
subtitles, because otherwise, Ghost can't be perfect. But anyway, so I tried showing the original adventure, and he bounced off it like before we even got finished with the opening song. But then this time, he was like, asked me about that show I tried showing him before, and I was like, oh yeah, don't worry, I'm gonna keep forcing it on you. Don't worry, there's plenty of time.
Just teach him Japanese. He's young. He can learn.
Through all of this, I'm just thinking, thank
Yeah.
Zero Two for introducing their antagonist in the first episode.
Like, it's much more watchable for that reason.
Zero Two has a really good opening.